All right, so Andrew Yang. Who is he? Where is he from? What's he about? What are his policies and what does he stand for? Well, let's look him up on Wikipedia and see exactly the basics, and then we'll do some more digging. So, Andrew Yang, born January 13th, 1975, is an American entrepreneur, the founder of Venture for America, and a U.S. 2020 Democratic presidential candidate. He worked in startups and early-stage growth companies as a founder or executive from 2000 to 2009. After he founded VFA, the Obama administration selected him in 2012 as a champion of change, and in 2015 as a presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship. In Yang's bid for the 2020 presidential nomination, one of his main campaign goals is to implement a provision for Universal Basic Income, UBI, known as the Freedom Dividend for every American adult, in response to the rapid development of automation that is leading to workforce challenges. He was born in Schenectady, New York, to immigrant parents from Taiwan. His parents met where they were both in graduate school at the University of California, Berkeley. His father graduated with a PhD in physics and worked in research labs of IBM and General Electric, generating over 69 patents in his career. And his mother graduated with a master's degree in statistics and later became an artist. So his mom probably was a homemaker after she had him. And that's cool, right? I don't know how many brothers and sisters he has. He has 2 sons. He's married to a woman named Evelyn Yang. Other than that, he lives in Manhattan currently. He went to Brown University, got a Bachelor of Arts in Economics, and after Brown University, he attended Columbia Law School, where he received a jurisprudence doctorate. That means he's an actual lawyer. He actually worked as a corporate attorney at Davis & Polk and Wardwell in New York City. He left the firm in 2000 to launch StarGiving.com, so he was only there a year. And this actually crashed in 2001 after, he was young. He didn't really have the everything together the way he wanted to have things together. And but after that, he joined a healthcare software startup as its vice president and third hire. He worked there for 4 years, left, and then started working for a place called Manhattan Prep. That was basically, they did testing. They gave out GMAT testing, which is kind of like the SATs, right? PSATs, things of this nature. But it's for a specific purpose. It's like the MCATs when you're going to go be a doctor or a lawyer. Yeah, when you're going to go be a doctor, and then they have another one when you want to go be a lawyer. It's like the bar exam, right? The GMAT, though, it's for the Graduate of Management Admissions Test, right? It's intended to assess certain analytical, writing, quantitative, verbal, and reading skills in written English for use in administration. The graduate management program, such as an MBA, it requires knowledge of certain specific grammar and things of this nature. Now, it ended up getting bought by Kaplan in 2009, and then Yang resigned as the company's president in early 2012, where he founded Venture for America, right? Actually, he founded in 2011 with the mission to create economic opportunity in American cities by mobilizing the next generations of entrepreneurs and equipping them with the skills and resources they need to create jobs. Basically, it's like a redistribution system for intelligent people and entrepreneurs. All right, he basically took them and went to Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, Vegas, New Orleans, Philadelphia, and Providence, Columbus, Miami, and San Antonio, and St. Louis in 2014, right? And they also ended up adding Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Birmingham, Charlotte, and I think that's about it. So basically what they did was they took a whole bunch of some of the best and the brightest out of college graduating classes, gave them some money, and sent them out into poorer neighborhoods and poorer cities that were underdeveloped or hit hard by the destruction of manufacturing jobs. Places like Detroit, Columbus, Chicago, or Columbus, Cincinnati. These are Ohio heavy Rust Belt places. And then Birmingham and Alabama also had a whole lot of issues falling down, things of this nature. With his 2020 presidential campaign, November 6, 2017, Yang filed with the Federal Election Commission to run for president of the United States in 2020. So he's been thinking about this for about 2 years, right? He's legitimate. He's been doing this for about 2 years. His campaign proposes a $1,000 a month freedom dividend for all U.S. citizens over the age of 18, a form of universal basic income, and other responses to predictions of mass unemployment from technological automation. All right, yeah. He wants White House psychologists and making tax day a national holiday to stem corruption, increasing the salaries of federal regulators but limiting their private work after they leave public service. That's actually not a terrible idea. This guy has some really good ideas, but the UBI is not one of them. Like, UBI is something that's going to come, but it's not something that's going to be long term, right? You know, it's not something that's going to work. Like, it's going to end up bankrupting America. A lot of individuals don't know about that, and I will show you some stuff just to educate you this way along the way. And other than that, that's about it for his this Wikipedia page. So let's go to the next part.
But let me ask you the other, I think, really important question is, in your plan, how would you pay for this? Because there have been different ideas that I've seen, changes to the earned income tax credit. I mean, let's get into the brass tacks. How would Andrew Yang pitch paying for something that could be 10 to 12% of the GDP, that expensive of a government program?
So again, I just want to say it's not a government program and that every dollar goes into the hands of an American citizen. It's a true dividend, where if you were a company and you said, hey, we're declaring a dividend, we're giving this money to shareholders, then everyone would say that's great management. In this case, we, the citizens of this country, are the owners, and if the dividend comes to us, then it's not a government program, it's simply the shareholders of society receiving some of the vast wealth of the society. So it's not a government program, it's actually extraordinarily inexpensive to administer, because if it's truly universal, you don't have case managers or people trying to figure out how much money you make, like all of that stuff goes away.
But at least in the short term, the funding would have to come.
Right. So, so it's actually much more affordable than most people think. So the headline number is about $2 trillion. Our economy is about 19 trillion, so that seems like a lot. But if you dig into the numbers, you find that we're spending about $500 billion right now on income support in various ways: in-kind, food stamps, welfare, housing, Social Security, disability. And this would be overlapping, so if someone's receiving, let's say, $700 in benefits right now, then you go to them and say, hey, you can keep your current benefits, or you can go to the freedom dividend and get $1,000 a month free and clear.
So they would have the option.
They would have the option, but because we're already spending $500 billion, this thing is 25% paid for before you even get started.
Because you wouldn't be able to have both. You wouldn't be able to have Medicare. I mean, that was one of my questions, is what it would do to other governmental assistance programs.
Yes. So I believe that we need to transition to a Medicare for All program, because healthcare is one of the major stressors and costs for both American families and individuals, but also businesses. And it's 18% of the economy. It's not giving us proper value, because it's not like our healthcare outcomes are twice as good as other countries, even though we're spending twice as much. But my proposal to pay for universal basic income does not touch Medicaid, Medicare. The $500 billion I described does not include those programs.
Social Security?
So it includes Social Security disability, which is when individuals are receiving income support. So the big problem we're facing as a society is that more and more work is being done by machines, robots, AI, software. And income tax is a terribly inefficient way of actually harvesting that value for the public. So if you look at it, who are going to be the beneficiaries of this transition to automation? It's going to be large tech companies who are excellent at not paying a lot of tax.
Very good at offshore
yeah,
tax
they'll
havens.
just move it over and like say it all went through Ireland. Small tech companies, which are often not profitable, and then if they do get acquired, it's maybe a one-time thing and they might have to pay on an acquisition at a certain point, but even then it's at a capital gains rate. So like there's just not a lot of money that's going to be coming to the public, even as more and more work is going to be done by robots and software. So that's what we need to change, and that's the way we pay for universal basic income. The way we pay for it is we implement a value-added tax, which right now is in practice in every other industrialized country in the world except for us. And through a value-added tax then, so Amazon, now it's 43% of e-commerce, like largest market cap. Jeff Bezos could be the first trillionaire. But there are periods when they said, hey, we didn't even make any money, like this quarter, so no income tax. Whereas a value-added tax, then they pay based on transaction, and that's inescapable. That's one reason why other countries use it, is that it's a much, much more effective way to get revenue. And so if you're a self-driving truck company, you might not have many humans making money, and so there's not much income tax coming, but a value-added tax, then we get our fair share. And a value-added tax would generate between $700 and $800 billion if we were to implement it at half the European level. The European average VAT is 20%. Our economy is so vast that if we had a VAT of 10%, it would generate $700 to $800 billion. So that is my primary mechanism to pay for the universal basic income, because you have 500 billion plus 800 billion in the VAT. So then you're at about 65% of the 2 trillion. And then the remainder, this is the beauty of universal basic income. We are already spending hundreds of billions on healthcare, incarceration, homelessness, like all of these services for people that are falling through the cracks, that those expenses would go down if these people are able to stay out of the emergency room.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because the Peterson Institute, I was looking at some of their research, apparently in the 70s in Manitoba, Canada, I feel like there was an experiment done with several thousand people that looked at universal basic income. So there is some empirical evidence of what happens, right? And I found it interesting that once a universal income was provided, there were better outcomes when it came to things like health and education.
Yeah, so
what's happening there?
And this is the most powerful stuff of universal basic income, is that it's very human. So Mincom, in that Canadian town you're describing, what they found was that hospital visits went down 9%. They found that domestic violence went down, mental health went up, and children stayed in school longer. In another study in North Carolina, they actually found that children's personalities changed to become more conscientious and agreeable, which are both very positive traits for academic and professional success. So this is what we're talking about at the human level. And so if you can imagine, right now, you know what's really, really expensive? Dysfunction. People coming to the emergency room and then like having massive problems that we as a society end up paying for in various ways. Functionality is actually much less expensive. So we're going to get hundreds of billions back from things we're currently spending on healthcare and incarceration and homelessness. And then, as the economy grows, because we're putting money in the hands of American consumers, we get 25% of the growth back, because that's the ratio of revenue to GDP growth in the US. So with a VAT of 10%, you essentially pay for $1,000 a month per American adult in perpetuity.
All right, so let's talk about Andrew Yang's freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American in the United States, probably of working age, right? So we're talking $2 trillion headline numbers, right? You can basically bank that up to like 2.25, right? First year, getting everything set up. You're probably going to cost about $200 billion. So let's also talk about what it's going to cost us to borrow $2 trillion just to begin with, all right? Because our federal deficit at current sits at about $25 trillion of money that we don't have. Add to that, as of next year, the year after, Social Security and Medicare will be 100% of the United States federal budget. We're going to have to borrow for everything else. At current, in case you haven't noticed, I put up these GSA numbers earlier while he was talking, just so y'all could understand really where we are, all right? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, education, and part of defense spending, not even all of it, covers our entire tax receipts every fucking year. No matter what happens, every year, that's how much is spent. And we borrow for everything else that we do with the government. So this $2 trillion is literally just borrowing money. And he's right about the $500 billion spent on welfare, Section 8, things of this nature. But it's actually a little bit more, you know what I mean? Because, you know, out of child support payments, around $1 trillion go back and forth between men to women in child support every year. And 51% of that actually goes to the state to pay back for welfare benefits for the children who are receiving them through their single mothers, because, you know, the state doesn't want to have to pay those by itself. There's a lot of things to talk about here. But so $2 trillion is what it's going to cost just to start with. Over 30 years, the amount of money that's going to end up being paid out is $30 billion a year just in interest on $1 trillion, $2 trillion, $60 billion a year. 60 billion times 30 is 180, or, you know, 60 billion times 30 billion is 1.8 trillion. 1.8 trillion dollars is what's going to end up being spent in 30 years, right? Just in interest. And that's every year. Man, listen, all right, that's every year. It's going to be a new payment that gets started, right? The next year, another $2 trillion you're borrowing. Yeah, you're gonna keep tacking that on every 30 years. So basically, it's like you're borrowing $4 billion a year over and over and over again. And you're printing that money out of thin air, so the value of your currency is going to continue to go down in the dumps. So that $1,000 that you're actually being given for a freedom dividend is going to end up being worthless. It's not going to buy anything. The American consumer will be consumed. And inflation will destroy everything. It'll be what it is. I'm kind of at a loss of words. Add to that, he wants universal health care, which will cost about $3 trillion a year. And that cannot be funded properly unless you double the taxes on every working American in the United States. Every taxpayer. You'd have to double all of their taxes. And even then, it still wouldn't pay for it. This guy, he has a lot of good ideas. He's kind of centrist when it comes to a lot of policies. Like, he thinks you should close down the Mexican border too. He thinks you're gonna have to control immigration because, you know, you can't just keep paying for the whole world to receive these benefits because it would just wreck everything. So, I mean, he's not a terrible dude. I like him. I like the way he speaks. I like the fact he's talking about the working class in America and trying to help them out. He's a good guy. But the truth of the matter is that I really think that he's been indoctrinated in modern monetary policy and this modern monetary theory that really doesn't make any sense when it really comes down to it, because they're going off the CPI numbers right now, which are completely cooked. And every number in the world, you know what I mean, is like, if you use a bad number in an equation, like, it throws the entire equation off. It tends to be how it operates. You know, that's why, like, string theory can't really be proven, because, you know, like, they stood here and tried to make a whole bunch of different theories, max one, and just, it's all ridiculous. It's all grand, beautiful math to make the policy, to make the math fit the policy rather than having the policy fit the math. And this just doesn't add up economically. It is what it is. So with that being said, that is a breakdown of Andrew Yang, who he is, what he's about, what his policies are. And we can talk about the 4chan troll thing, but ultimately that's just, you know, 4chan being 4chan, and they're turning on him currently. So it is what it is. But man, this is Tom Pease with Pinoy News, and like to thank Let's Be Frank for helping me out. You know what I mean? You know, hey man, like, share, and subscribe. You'll know the situation. Peace.